Hi, I'm Steven and I make cardboard costumes and props. Today I'm making Robot Santa from Futurama. As always, the free template is linked in the description of the video. Let's get started! I started off by making the head, which is just a cylinder. I took a flimsy poster board and trimmed it down so I had a strip that was 11 inches tall. I added a small dot to the bottom of the center of this strip, and then just use that dot to help me line up the face template onto this poster board, just so it was centered. When it was centered, I lightly taped it onto the poster board and then used a knife with a ruler to cut out all the shapes. I know it looks a little derpy right now, and it's going to look derpy for a while, but I promise it'll get better. I wrapped this strip around my head in order to get a comfortable fit. Once it fit my head, I taped it on the inside and then glued straight down that seam. The extra poster board strip that I had cut out of the mouth, I just glued that onto the inside of the head along the seam in order to just make it a little bit more secure. Onto the teeth. The teeth were just cut out of cereal box cardboard. It's a zigzag. I used cereal box cardboard because it's a little bit sturdier than poster board and I didn't want the teeth to bend. I taped these pieces onto the inside of the mouth and then took my time positioning them into place before I added some glue in order to secure them into place. And at this point I thought the head looked really funny, and I can't help but laugh at how awkward he looks. It just kind of looks like this monster in headlights, like zombie looking eyes. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, once the teeth were glued down, I moved on to the eyes. I printed out two options for the eyes, thick or thin, and I wasn't sure which one I liked better, but in the end I opted for the thicker ones just because it made him look a little bit more evil. I cut them out of corrugated cardboard and quickly decided that they weren't beefy enough, so I thickened them up by stacking together 3 layers for each eye, and that just made it look a whole lot better. However, I was stuck with all those corrugation lines along the sides, and I don't like them being exposed, so I just covered up the corrugation holes with masking tape, no big deal. And since the tops look messy with the little pieces of tape, I added one more layer of this shape, just this time in cereal box cardboard. It gave it a nice, clean, sleek look. Next up are Robot Santa's ears, which are missile launchers. To make these, I took strips of poster board, rolled them into tubes, and added a styrofoam ball to one side. If you're following along and don't have a few of these balls, these styrofoam balls, you can totally use a Christmas ornament, the Christmas ball. It will look exactly the same. Anyway, some hot glue secured the ball into place, and then I taped down the seam in order to help make it look a little bit cleaner and more streamlined. To fill the gap on the other end of the tube, I traced the tube onto corrugated cardboard, cut that circle out, and then used scraps of paper from the template to help glue it into the tube. I glued 2 paper strips in the shape of a cross onto the circle. I gently bent the ends inward, added hot glue to the ends, and then quickly slipped those ends into the tube. I figured that the paper would spring back a little bit, and the glue would end up holding everything together when it touched the sides of the inside of the tube, and I was right. I was really happy about that. So yeah, 2 solid little tubes that make up Santa's ears. Once I had all those pieces done, I gave everything a nice coat of gray paint. I probably should have painted the cylinder poster board before doing anything, but whatever, it worked out in the end. The teeth were gray mixed with a little bit of yellow, and then the sides of the eyes and the curved part of the ears were painted in a darker color. In order to get this color, I just mixed together the gray paint with black paint and a little bit of purple. Craft paint often dries a lot darker than it looks, so be careful with the colors if you're following along. Once the eyes were dry, I traced them onto a flimsy mesh screen, cut it out, and painted the screens orange. I then glued them together, and the eyes are done. Super cool looking, right? The nose is just another styrofoam ball that I painted in gray, but this time I mixed in black, purple, and red in order to give him kind of a reddish tint to his nose. I think that covers everything that I needed to do for the head, so... okay, yeah, let's move on to the hat. I started by wrapping the very top of his head in a strip of corrugated cardboard. This adds so much structure and support to the mask, so it's no longer super flimsy. But doesn't it look like he's kind of like this derpy guy with a headband? I don't know, I kind of love the way it looks. I also added a little bit of support to the bottom of the head on the inside of the mask, just on either side of the mouth so it wouldn't flare out. For the top part of the hat, I took craft wrapping paper, just Christmas wrapping paper, and wrapped it into a cone that fits the top of the cylinder. This piece is not included in the template because it's literally just a giant cone. I cut it to the size that I liked and then taped it on to my desk in order to paint it. Each side was painted in red craft paint, and I painted both sides because in my mind that just would help avoid some of the wrinkles. I didn't notice until the very end that I used metallic red craft paint, so that's actually why it looks a little bit shimmery in the video. When the paint was dried, I glued it to the top of Santa's head. I basically just added some hot glue right along the corrugated cardboard strip around his head, so basically just glued it right onto the headband. I scrunched it up a little bit and folded the pointy part of the cone to the side of his head, and then took a 2-inch wide strip of poster board and wrapped it around the head, covering up all that messy glue and wrapping paper. This kind of acts as the white fur part of his hat. It wasn't long enough, so I actually needed to add a little patch on the back, but I flipped him around and then moved on to his spiky pom-pom. I printed out a template for the cones and then cut each paper piece out. Instead of cardboard, I'm just going to keep it as paper. I rolled each piece into a cone and then glued them closed with a little bit of Mod Podge. Once that glue was dry, I added a really messy, gloopy blob of hot glue on the inside of each cone and immediately pressed it onto the styrofoam ball. The glue dripped down the inside of the cone and landed on the ball, which secured it into place without making a mess on the outside of the ball, so it looks really nice and clean. I repeated this until all 6 of the cones were glued down, and then coated everything in a coat of Mod Podge just to give it a little bit of extra security, and you'll be surprised how much Mod Podge strengthens that paper and makes it a little bit stronger. I pushed that off to the side to dry, and then it was time to work on Robot Santa's beard. First up is his mustache. Once again, just poster board that I taped and then glued onto the mask. That makes it sound really easy, but I actually took my time with this, figuring out how high up I wanted the mustache to go. It was a little bit tricky to get it in a nice position, but if you're following along, my advice is just to be patient and make sure none of the glue shows up on the top of the mustache. Keep all that glue on the inside below it and make sure that the mustache is pointing down a little bit so it covers the glue. For his bottom lip, I did the exact same thing, except I made sure that it pointed up instead of down. I also didn't worry about any glue showing up on the outside, since that's going to get covered up by the beard. Speaking of the beard, it's a 3-page printout. I cut it out, taped the 3 pieces together, and then taped it onto the mask as a test fit, and I recommend you doing a test fit if you're following along. I'd rather make the adjustments on the paper and take this extra step instead of being stuck with a beard that won't fit. And I'm glad I did it because I folded down the excess on each of the sideburns, and I had to overlap the centerpiece of his beard just a little bit in order to get a snug fit along the bottom lip. Once it looked good, I removed the paper template and cut it out of poster board. So say goodbye to this derpy guy. He's going to turn into Santa really quickly. I'm excited to show you guys. To attach the beard to the head, I did the same thing as the paper. I used tape and just wiggled it into position. Once it was in position, I added hot glue to the underside of the beard to hold it in place. I rounded the corners of the sideburns and then glued them down before moving on to assembling all the pieces. I started off by lightly taping a paper triangle to the center of his face. This just helped me position the eyes, and once they were in position, I just took off the paper. I added hot glue to the inside corners of the eyes just to secure them into place, but there was no hot glue on the outside of the eyes. They just kind of stick out. More hot glue was used to attach the ear missles right above his mustache on either side of his face. And then even more hot glue was used to attach the spiky pom-pom bomb. You guessed it, more hot glue to glue a piece of black fabric to cover the back of the mouth, and all that was left on was to glue the nose. So yeah, let's move on to the glamour shots. There you have it, Robot Santa made out of cardboard and 2 poster boards. I love it. I've been wanting to make this mask for so many years. He looks so cool, so evil, so in love with our good boys, Dr. Zoidberg. I really hope you guys like it. And if you did, please leave a like and subscribe unless you want to be on the naughty list. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Merry Christmas!